Created with free version for non-commercial use.
In this lesson, we will learn how to create a bulleted list. But more importantly, we will learn how to nest HTML elements inside one another. Here we are in a text editor, and let's imagine that we would like to create a web page with a heading that reads My Grocery List, and then a bulleted list below that. So we'll begin by creating the header that says My Grocery List. Here's what that would look like in a web browser. And now let's add the actual bulleted list. In HTML, there is an element named unordered list. The code for this is UL. However, unlike heading elements and paragraph elements, we cannot simply type directly in this element. So for example, we cannot type milk, eggs, bread. This is not valid HTML code. Instead, we want to create an element for each list item. So the code for a list item is li. List item, milk. List item, eggs. List item, bread. So if I save and refresh in my web browser, you can see we now have a bulleted list. This marks the first time in the course that we have seen one element nest inside another. This is a big moment because nesting elements is an essential part of writing clean, well-structured, semantic HTML. If you recall, in an earlier lesson, I mentioned that creating HTML elements was like making sandwiches. We have a start tag, which is a piece of bread. We have the content, which is the meat or the peanut butter and jelly. And then we have a closing tag, which is another piece of bread. But once we start thinking about the entire page, our entire document, I think it's helpful to think of Russian stacking dolls. The dolls where one doll fits inside another, and fits inside another, which fits inside another, so on and so forth. In HTML, one element can stack inside another to create well-structured code. For example, we know that list items nest inside an unordered list, but we can also include a secondary list inside one of these list items. That was a lot of words to throw around. Let's see it in action. So for example, what if we wanted to buy different kinds of bread at the store? Inside this one list item, bread, we can create a secondary unordered list. And then within this UL element, we can create list items. So cinnamon raisin bread. New list item, sourdough bread. New list item, whole wheat bread. Now if we save and then head over to the browser and refresh, we can see that the structure of our HTML code has been put into action. We have a sublist indented from bread. Let's think back to the Russian stacking doll analogy for a moment, and as a quick exercise, let's follow the ancestry of sourdough bread. So in our code, we can see that sourdough bread is a list item, which fits inside this unordered list element. This unordered list has a direct parent of this list item for bread. That list item has a direct parent of the main unordered list element. Now on the surface, you may be thinking, great, all we did in this lesson is learn how to make a bulleted list. But it's so much more than that. By wrapping your mind around this idea of stacking elements inside one another, by wrapping your mind around this concept of ancestry, of parent elements and child elements, you're opening the door to all of HTML. As we begin to write more and more complex HTML code in this course, everything will revert back to this lesson, this idea of nesting. So it's important that you understand this early on. In our next lesson, we'll take a look at nesting once again. Only instead of focusing on bulleted lists, we'll look at HTML pages from a bird's eye view. I'll see you in the next lesson.
Created with free version for non-commercial use.